Greetings from the Regional English Language Office, and welcome to this installment of Relo Brazil celebrating English Teaching Forum Journal's 60th anniversary. My name is Maria Snarsky, and I am the director of the Regional English Language Office at the U.S. Embassy. And today I'm joined with my colleague Elmara de Moraes, who is the deputy director of the office. Elmara has been with the office for over 14 years. Elmara, would you like to say a few words to open?
Sure, Maria. Thank you for the warm welcome. And welcome everybody, to this special series of conversations for 2022 to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the English Teaching Forum Journal. Forum for short, started back in 1962 and is a quarterly publication written for teachers and by teachers. If you are unfamiliar with Forum, it's available online as well as for free and fully downloadable at americanenglish.state.gov. So, today we are pleased to continue this special series with Rosane Correia, who authored an article for English Teaching Forum back in 2006. Before we get into the details about her article, let me introduce you to Rosane by giving you some information about her background. Rosane Correia has been an EFL teacher for over 30 years. Lots of experience in there. Before she retired, she was a teacher trainer and branch supervisor at CCBU Campinas, as well as an SIT trainer. She did her MA in Applied Linguistics at Unicamp. She is now teaching online classes to prepare her students for the Cambridge exams. So, welcome with us here, Rosane.
Yeah, welcome, Hosani. So great that you can join us. We'll start
Hi,
the
thank you so
cameras.
much.
Yeah,
Thank you so
great,
much
great. Thank.
for the welcome. I'm so happy to be here chatting with you.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's get started. All right. So we want to dive into the article. As mentioned, you wrote and published the article called Encouraging Critical Reading in the EFL Classroom back in 2006. Wow, it was a while ago, huh? Can you tell us, Hosani, what sparked your interest in this subject of critical reading skills in that year, 2006?
Well, I have always been interested in teaching reading in EFL classrooms. And a while before the article, I was doing my MA, and this was the topic of my MA dissertation, teaching reading. But what really sparked my interest in writing the article and submitting it to forum was the one incident, and I described this incident with one of my students in the introduction of my text. So it was something like this. One day, this intermediate student was doing some calculations on a notepad. Naturally, I thought that he was doing his math homework during my class. So I just came quietly near him and asked him, what are you doing? Why aren't you reading and doing the tasks and answering the questions about the text? He said that he was all done. He had read it, finished the tasks, and just out of curiosity, he was calculating how many times he had answered true, false statements in Portuguese history, geography, science, and English. And he added 124 only this week. That's 496 in a month. So I thought, God, I was so curious that he had bothered to count. But at the same time, for me, it was an eye opener. I just thought there's something missing in the way reading is taught in most classrooms. So that's why I did the research. After that, I did the research on critical reading and active reading tasks, the ones that are not only find the answer in the text, but they get students participating and discussing the text, working on language, interacting with one another to discuss their different interpretations of the text. And then I recorded one lesson. It was an advanced student, a group of advanced students at Centro Cultural. And then, based on the results of that lesson, I wrote the article. And my message to the teachers at that time was really, who happened to read my text, was that reading, critical reading is really interesting for students and motivating more than just answering true, false questions or multiple choice.
All right. Yeah, thank you. That's you also answered like giving the summary of the article. Love to hear how it sparked your interest and how it
Right?
even came to your attention to consider the challenges with how people teach reading, right? So maybe let's dive a little deeper in something that you put in the article. And you had said with active reading tasks, there is less of a tendency by students to accept text at face value or to
Mhm.
assume that the printed word has to be true. And I just want to remind the people who are watching this that Hosani wrote this article in 2006. And I cannot help but think that, wow, not accepting texts at face value is more important every day in this age of information, misinformation, and disinformation. So what you wrote then is so applicable to current day. But considering this, if you were to update the ideas in this article, is there something you'd change or emphasize?
Well, yes, as you said, this article is very update. It is. I wouldn't update it so much because it's still valid. The issue that motivated me to write the article is still valid nowadays. I have a grandson who is in third grade, and his books are full of true false statements to test comprehension of books. So the issue is still there. This not much is done on critical reading in reading lessons. So if I had to update it a little bit, maybe I would reduce the first part. The first part of the text after the introduction is a review of the literature. And then I talked about the advantages of designing more active reading tasks, and something about the articles on critical reading. So if I had to update it nowadays for my my readers on in 2022, then I would shorten the first part, the review of the literature. And I would maybe highlight more the steps of the lesson, and also make it the conclusion and the feedback on the students something longer. Maybe I would add more comments from the students, because you see, since it was a project for Unicamp, one of my classes, I recorded the lesson. So I had I timed how much time the students took reading the lesson, doing some activities, written activities, and how much time they had speaking. So it was like 40% of the recording. That's a lot. So they really enjoyed that part, or felt motivated to discuss the article. The article, in fact, I replaced it. I saved it. I have it here. So look at that. Bottom of the class, and under the big block letters, it said, only Brazil, Mozambique, and the old Soviet Union have worse schools. So I predicted, because Brazil was mentioned in the headline, that the students would be motivated to read. So I didn't use the reading text from the textbook, and I used this one. Mhm. And they had lots of comments, very positive feedback. They said it was a very positive learning experience. So that's what I would maybe expand in my 2022 article if I were to write it again.
Oh, great. Oh, that's I love that you reflecting on the fact that there's so much still that people use true and false. there's a
Mhm.
role for that, right? But I think, yeah, we do have to go beyond that. It sounds like you did a lot with this article and the research surrounding it. And can you tell us more how the topic maybe impacted your career?
Well, after the publication on a forum of this article, I also presented it at the 10th Brastiço in Brasilia in July 2006. And I remember that it also had a lot of positive feedback from the teachers, from the audience. They came to talk to me during break time, and it was also very positive. As you said in my biodata, I'm a licensed SIT trainer. I also included that in the article, in the reading list of the courses that Centro Cultural offered for binational center teachers from 2014 to 2010 to 2014. So my article is there in the reading list of the SIT program for teachers. And for me, impacted my career, in my teaching practice. Well, I've been teaching, now I'm teaching online, and these students that are preparing for the Cambridge exams, in the Cambridge exams, there is a considerable amount of reading. So we talk about what the text has to offer, like not only the multiple choice or comprehension questions or vocabulary work, but something working on the language. This kind of for me, this adds a certain dimension to the text, what I call extra mileage. So the teacher would get more from the text if he or she could help the students identify the bias of the author, see if metaphors are there for a certain reason. So this work on language during the reading lesson is, for me, is very profitable. It's a very rich learning experience for the students. So that's,
Great.
I
Yeah.
find those techniques very useful. In my article, I included a checklist of 20 questions. Of course, the teachers wouldn't be able to use 20 questions in a reading lesson. That would be too time consuming. But if the teacher could have in mind like 2 to 4 basic questions, that would be a start. And working, trying to develop critical reading skills should be a kind of a day-to-day routine in every reading lesson. Maybe choose 2 to 4 questions, different questions every time, but be consistent, use in every teaching lesson. Mhm. So
Yeah.
that's
Thanks.
how I feel, how I'm doing with my students.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great.
Mhm.
I think beyond just reading, I mean, anything that folks are reading, whether it's for a reading class or not, it's so important to get into, as you say, the biases, the metaphors.
Mhm.
That's, really taking the reading to other, I guess, heights, if you will. There's
Yeah,
so
like a
much more
deeper
in that article
level.
than
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah. Let me hand it over to my colleague, Elmada, to further the conversation. Elmada, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Maria. So, Rosane, I see, considering your last answer, your comments, that critical reading skills have really influenced your teaching practices and all the activities you've done. So, the article simply reflected, the way you teach, the way you think, and the way you consider, and all the reflections you've made on critical reading, right? So, what additional resources would you recommend to others? Besides your article, of course, because you commented that now your
Mhm.
article is part of the teacher training, let's say, resources that teachers have. But what other resources would you recommend? To teachers, novice or more experienced teachers who also want to read or learn more about critical reading skills.
Nowadays you can find anything on the internet. So if you Google developing critical reading skills in EFL classrooms, you'd get a long list of like a very long bibliography. My article had nine, my text on forum had nine articles. I noticed that I remember using the set of videos that Relo offers, the Shaping the Way We Teach English, that you can find. They are available on YouTube, and it's divided into modules, and every module has some background information and this bibliography. So on the module about critical reading, there is also a very extensive bibliography, so teachers could rely on that. And yeah, this set of video was really interesting. I used it in 2014 with a group of public school teachers. It was a course offered for 12 teachers at Centro Cultural. And I remember the teachers in the beginning found it difficult to handle the background information, but they felt the video was really interesting and useful for them because they could relate the theory and the practice. And they could adapt the ideas, even though they realized that since the videos were recorded in American classrooms with American teachers and students, sometimes the students were not all of them were American. I think they were some children from immigrant families as well. But they could see that the reality of the video was not the same as the Brazilian reality in our schools, but they could adapt the classes. So that was very useful. I remember the participants of that course, those public school teachers, felt the videos were very useful. Mhm.
Yeah, that's nice. That's really nice to see that you could kind of connect different resources, from considering what our office offers. But now I would like to go a little more into your experiences and what brought you to the English teaching profession initially, because you were a very experienced professional. So you worked at a binational center, you were a supervisor, branch supervisor at CCBU in Campinas. You are also a trainer, an SIT, a school for international training for those who don't know about SIT, but School for International Training trainer. Okay, so you are teaching now online, you are working with your students virtually to prepare them for the Cambridge exams. So I'm really curious, what brought you to the English teaching profession originally? Yeah.
Well, actually, it's a very funny story. I was born and raised in Rio de Janeiro, and I remember that when I was 8 or 9 years old, whenever I went to the beach, I used to be fascinated by like the tourists passing and fascinated by the sound of the language. So looking back, I didn't feel the same with other languages that I listened to. And as a child, I just got closer to the tourists. Embarrassing, right? It has been a joke for years in my family, the way that I would just sit next to the tourists talking because I wanted to listen to the sound of the language. So my mom used to say, what's the point? You can't understand them. But then with this kind wait, I don't know, 9 years old, but I just said, one day I will. And then I started learning English in a language school at the age of 11. I had this idea that I would teach my mom how to speak English. So I prepared the visual aid that my teacher used in the school with my Team 1 group, and I came home and would teach her. She dropped out after a month. So I was so disappointed. But then later I imagined that's what I wanted to do as a career. Mhm. Because I love the language, and I imagine that I love the teaching as well.
That's so fantastic and interesting. I love that. You know, it's so nice to hear, you know, from teachers how they started, and this is so unique and special. But what advice would you, as a professional, advice or tips would you give to someone who is thinking about becoming an English teacher and who is about to embark on this career?
I'd say never stop studying, and I hope you love reading and you love being around people of all ages because that's important. After all, that's what we do. You're around people all the time. People who want to learn the language, but sometimes they don't want it, sometimes they don't like it, or they don't, or they have a lot of difficulty, and then the teacher tries her best to overcome those difficulties. Those two qualities are essential, and also love preparing classes because that's also going to be a big part of the teacher's role. And then for me, whenever I notice my students improving their writing skills or speaking skills, and I feel so, it's so gratifying because it's so pleasant to see I played a small role in this process, and it's really nice. So that's what I hope the new or future teachers would want for them as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's really rewarding to see them learning and to see the role we played in their lives or in their learning process. And while they learn, we also learn, right, Rosani?
True.
Okay, so thank you, Maria.
All right. So we're going to continue since you are good at giving advice. No, that's a great story about how you first got interested in English. It's I can completely I'm visualizing it, you know. So it's great. But we'd like to turn, of course, to your forum article again, and just the idea that okay, you wrote this, and it's published, and you know if you can remember when you were writing it, we just wonder if you have any advice to somebody else who might be thinking about you know submitting an article to forum. Do you have anything you'd suggest? Any tips?
Mm. Well, first of all, read the submission guidelines. They are really useful. They will help you to know how you can structure the test to best fit the what the journal had in mind for the, I don't know, number of pages, because it helped me a lot, the submission guidelines. Then maybe, well, let's see, the teacher would think of uh, an idea that that he or she feels strongly about, and then do some research about that. But also think of the audience, the future readers, have practical ideas in mind that they could use in their classrooms. Then after that, of course, you submit the article. Be patient because the whole process takes time. And last but not least, don't get discouraged because sometimes when the editor sends back like a comment, it comes with a lot of suggested changes. So work on the suggested changes. The article will be clearer, more interesting, and it's a wonderful learning experience for the teacher as well. When you are in the process of implementing the changes and submitting again. So it's really nice. I really enjoyed that part. It was kind of I wasn't patient at that time, but I could understand. My husband helped me a lot because as a university professor, he also goes through this waiting period. So he said, "No, wait." And then that's what I would suggest for someone who wanted to submit to the article, to the forum.
That's great advice. Really, really good. And I think it applies, you know, really to any journal that you're might be interested in submitting to. I've heard this before, make sure what you're submitting to, what they're looking for. So, and then of course, be very patient, because it does take a long time. So thank you for that. That's fantastic advice. The next thing I would ask, but you've actually already answered it, is I was going to ask you what other resources from our office are you familiar with? Did you find useful? One you mentioned was the Shaping series, and I'm really pleased to hear that we it's an older title, but I think it's still relevant, right? I mean, it's still useful because it gives you, of course, an insight to another classroom, and you don't always get to go inside another classroom. So, if you have any others you want to mention, that's fine. But I think you've already answered the question with Shaping. But if you have another resource you want to mention, feel free. If you have something in
Not
mind.
really, because after I retired and left Centro Cultural, I haven't been like I was contact with the Relo office, and I haven't read any forum magazines in the last few years. No.
Yeah, no, I understand if you're retired, you may not be looking for this kind of information. But for those of you who are watching who are not retired, uh, we have a lot of resources on our website. And of course, you can tap into them via Relo Brazil on Facebook. So I get it, Hosani, that you may not be looking at this stuff, but we do since then, and we continue to generate a lot of materials that we think are super useful. And even as we were discussing just at the beginning, your article that is already how old is it? It's approaching what is it? Gosh, I have to do math, right?
16
10,
years,
16
16 years.
years. Yes.
Uh,
I mean, it's still relevant. That's what I love about Forum. It's these ideas are not, they're not fleeting. They are very useful even many years on. All right. Well, we don't have any other questions really for you. I just want to thank you for your time and for your stories and for your advice. It was a real pleasure, talking to you about your experience and, your tips and about teaching and how you even got into it. So, um, I guess Ilmad, or maybe let's start with you, Hazani. Do you have any final words or message for those who are watching?
uh, well, I would just like to see in when
I'm
right,
just
it's back. Okay. In my when I check some books on teaching how to teach reading skills, I don't usually see critical reading. They talk about reading strategies, pre-reading, while reading, post-reading activities, but nothing really on critical reading. So my ideal world would be when something all courses would include something like that, all those strategies, because they are so helpful. Uh, uh, and it's a pity that some teachers would assign reading for homework, and then if they do it all the time, what is the message that they are passing on to the students? That reading is a less important skill, that they can develop reading skills on their own, and it's simply not the case. So then for teachers, try and help students discuss the text as well. So that would be maybe my final message.
you. I think it's a good one. So, Elmara, did you have any parting thoughts for our audience?
I do, I do. So first of all, thank you so much, Josene. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoy, the time we were here together talking about your experiences, your advice, and everything you shared with us today. And of course, your article, the critical reading or critical reading skills are essential. And as you mentioned, sometimes attention or enough attention is not given to that, let's say, skill we all need to develop, and it's so current, with all the disinformation, misinformation we've gone through nowadays. This is key for our interpretation and comprehension of things. So thank you so much for sharing, and hope our colleagues here, our followers, check this article and check other articles that we have available in this such special journal. That forum is for English teachers and by English teachers. Thank you so much, Rosane.
You're welcome. My pleasure. So I felt it was a great meeting you in person, because I talked to Elmar on the phone. And maybe we will meet again in some future events, Brastiso events. Okay.
Great,
Thank
great.
you.
So thanks again, Hosani, for all of your stories and your insights. And I will just remind our viewers that you should stay tuned for the next interview of our featured Brazilian Forum author. And thanks for watching. You can ask questions, and we'll try to get back to you if you have any for Hosani. All right, thanks.
Bye.